Okay, let's get into the definition of what continuous improvement is now. So, when I talk about the definition, there is kind of a purist view of the definition of continuous improvement, and that is the art of relentlessly attempting to make people, organizations, operations, and processes better. So, basically, it's kind of a wordy way of saying that it's really about just constantly doing whatever it takes to make the entire organization and its components do better every day. Now, specific to lean, there is a flavor of that that really focuses on value and on reducing waste. So when you kind of look at the lean version of continuous improvement, that's what a lot of the modern continuous improvement takes tend to be focused on lean. That is value and waste are really the cornerstones of what continuous improvement means to those people. So as you move forward and start researching continuous improvement, you're looking into it, just find more information out, read books. What you'll find is that continuous improvement is just one of many terms that mean close to the same thing. So there's a couple alternative, not necessarily definitions, but versions of continuous improvement. So some people might refer to it as just doing more with less or efficiency. Some people might refer to it as process improvement rather than continuous improvement. And there's some subtle nuances to the variance. You might also see people focusing on problem solving or goal oriented problem solving. So these are all just basically different ways to describe the same thing. But when you get down to the roots of all of these different things, one of the key components that you want to have is it has to have common sense behind it. So some of this that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be obvious. So when you talk about flow or reducing inventory as part of lean, it may not be obvious, but as you start peeling back the layers of those onions, everything about continuous improvement should make sense. It should be very intuitive once you get to that core piece of why you're doing it the way you're doing it. It doesn't mean it's easy. It doesn't mean that it's not a change. It just means that it matches the common view of common sense. So if you describe it, people will understand why the basic principles behind the changes you're making are good. So as you've read through my definitions, you may end up seeing a couple of the issues with it. There's a challenge with any type of topic, especially one that's really focused on critical thinking, is because y- I'm an advocate of thinking critically, diving into the details, really putting a lot of thought into it when you talk about continuous improvement. And that means that you're talking about a group of people that are going to pick apart a problem. So why not pick apart the definition? So the definition I gave you earlier really invites scrutiny. If you kind of look at this little list here, one of the terms I use is relentless. It's a vague term. It's an emotional term. How many times a day do you have to do continuous improvement for it to really be considered relentless? What about when I said people in the definition? Am I talking about customers, vendors, the financiers? Who is it that we're really talking about with people? How much better does something have to get to be considered better? What if it's only 0.01% better a day and you barely budge over the course of a year, but you're still getting better? Or what if you get better 4 days, backslide 1 day, get better 3 days, backslide for 2 days? How much when we say continuous improvements? And the final part on there is I said it's the art. And why art and not science? Because as you start learning more about what I teach, I advocate a lot, and I mean a lot of fact based decision making. So, there's a lot of data collection, there's a lot of tools that force you to look really critically and quantitatively at problems to make these improvements. So, why am I saying art? Well, it's basically because all the improvements definitely contain science in them, but there's an art in deciding how to put them together. The big picture of continuous improvement, it's more of like a general concept. It's not something that's specifically tangible in the way other different like concepts would be. And because of that, it has different meanings to different people. And while it might have the same general definition that people can agree on when they actually talk about the application, you might see some divergence in how they actually apply the concept to their work. Their ideas start to diverge. So how you apply these ideas can vary quite a bit. So if we talk about things like if we talk about continuous improvement, we're also it's probably more analogous, most analogous to terms like management or leadership or quality, or even like human resources, where these are all concepts that have a different meaning to different people. So when you talk about management, if you ask 10 different people to describe what good management looks like, you'll get 10 different answers. Or leadership, you might have people who advocate all sorts of different styles of leadership. So with that in mind, as we move forward, the real challenge with something like continuous improvement is that there's no specific governing body. So if you're talking about something like quality, you have ISO, the International Organization for Standardization, or the medical field has the AMA, American Medical Association. Collegiate sports is governed by the NCAA. Those are all governing bodies that have a say in how the methodology, the tools, the conduct is all applied. But there's nothing similar to that in continuous improvement. So continuous improvement really is basically what you want to make of it. If you go and look online, there's a lot of people teaching like I do, and there's a lot of companies out there that are advocating, and a lot of companies do training themselves. So the exception to this kind of concept of ownership, Six Sigma is actually trademarked. It was created by an engineer named Bill Smith at Motorola and had a service mark in 1991 and a trademark in 1993. But the term is in common use, and I haven't ever heard of Motorola like defending their trademark or saying people can't use the term without paying them. So I could be wrong on that. I'm not a trademark lawyer, but it's a pretty common term for being trademarked. And the other one is lean. So the concept of lean, it first appeared in, I think in the 80s, or maybe even before that, but it's credited to a guy named John Krafcik. And I don't know if I pronounced his name right. I've just seen it in print. I haven't heard a lot of people talking about it. It's pretty obscure if you ask people where the term first came out. But it's in an article he wrote called Triumph of the Lean Production System. But it was really popularized in the 90s by James Womack and Daniel Jones. And the big book that they have that really defines it is Lean Thinking. So that's kind of the background for as we talk about the concept of continuous improvement. Like I said, there's a lot to it, but with that in mind, there's not a lot of definitive governing bodies that can say this is exactly what it is. So I'll talk a little bit about that later, but just keep that in mind as we go forward. It's a very vague concept, and it means that you have the lack of structure can be good for some people and that you can apply it yourself. Now, I do really I really encourage you as you go through this, you make sure that you do come up with a definition that you're going to share within your company. You don't want to be having everybody within your own organization thinking of it differently. It doesn't matter too much if a different organization thinks of it differently, but you want to have a unity of understanding within your own company. So that's what I got about the definition of continuous improvement. Thanks a lot.